and welcome to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus live, all the way live radio show. And we are here back with you today. Welcome you back a week later on this beautiful Woke Wednesday, welcoming all the small business owners and the Democrats and soon-to-be small business owners, just everybody who's tuned in, who's just trying to find out what's going on with the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus, and also what's going on out there, what you ought to be doing, and things you should be paying attention to. Folks, we are so glad to have you back here because it's Woke Wednesday on the VADSBC, the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus show. And it's live, folks, live and coming to you on Facebook and streaming to you live on YouTube. We'll welcome you back, and we're glad to see you here. Also, today we have our co-host, which is Herron, my greatest co-host in the world. She is actually out on travel today, but she said she might try to dial in and just jump into the studio. So when she gets here, we'll just bring her right in and let her introduce herself and talk about what's going on with the Louisiana Democratic Small Business Caucus. We're definitely missing you, Herron, and I hope everything is safe with you. But folks, fantastic having you back here. We're going to start off as we always start off. We're going to start off talking about things that we know that are important. And the main thing we start off first is if you haven't been masking up and if you haven't gotten your vaccine, COVID is out there, and we want everybody to remain safe and to remain here with us and their family members. So it's just another reminder to you, if you haven't gotten your vaccination, if you haven't gone out there and encourage your other family members to get a vaccination, please do. But it's up to you. But I'm recommending that you do it if you believe it's the right thing for you and the right thing for your doctors telling you to do. So let's move on past that and let's start talking about some of the other things that we need to talk about. That's also extremely important. One of those things is voting. That's right. Voting and voting rights. Voting rights. It is so extremely important that everybody's out there and they're doing what they need to do, and they're able to do what they should be doing to support H.R. 1, which is the For the People Act, and letting your Congress people know about this, giving them a call and saying, hey, we would like to see this happen. And we need you to get this passed for all Americans, not just Democrats, so everybody has unfettered access to the vote. And there's been some interesting things that's been happening out here in Virginia on that. You know, we've had our Congress people, good folks like Jerry Conley and folks like Don Byers stepping up and saying, like they've been saying, voting rights unfettered is something all Americans need to have, and it is foundational that we need to make sure everyone can vote, because everything sort of flows from there, folks. And let me tell you, the other Voting Rights Act is H.R. 4, and that's the John Lewis Voting Rights Act that you've heard about. And just in case that you folks have not really gotten what H.R. 1 and H.R. 4 is, because there's been different people sort of coming on to the show at different times, but we want to just kind of let you know what H.R. 1 is all about. And let me tell you, H.R. 1, particularly, H.R. 4, and I'm working my own technology today. H.R. 1 is the For the People Act for 2021. And basically what that act does, the reason why it's so important and so progressive to make sure there is even voting rights across all states in the country, and why we're trying to get this done to make sure that folks' right to vote is unobstructed. This bill, if we can, that's been passed through the House, is going to expand voting right access to voting by making sure there's automatic and same-day voting registration nationwide, 2 weeks of early voting for all voters, a ban on purging voter rolls. It also restores full protections of the 1965 Voting Rights Act that was really taken out in 2013. Well, that needs to get back in. Also, what it does, it also attacks finance reforms and banning foreign money loopholes, things of that nature. It steps up election security to make sure election security is there, and independent commissions to prevent gerrymandering, other things like that. It also grants the states resources to replace old and outdated voting machines. And it also adds some additional processes in voting rights for auditing and for securing election results once they occur. That's extremely important. So when we talk HR 1, which is passed in the House of Representatives, please call your congresspeople, your senator, your representative, and tell them that it is important that they support HR 1. And I know this is something that we're going to have to continue to fight for to make sure that it happens. So step on up, folks. Do what you need to do there. It's extremely important. Voting rights is foundational. Also, let's talk about HR 4 now. That's the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And John Lewis Voting Rights Act, Advancement Act, what this actually does is puts preclearance back in place. Basically what preclearance does, before any changes can be made to any voting rights practices at all, it requires that the Department of Justice, basically, it is pre-cleared with them for any changes are made to voting rights for all Americans. And specifically what it really does is it modernizes the Rights Act's formula by determining discrimination in states and localities. It also declares changes to voting rules that have to be at least 180 days before an election, which is extremely important so people can weigh in on it and see whether or not those changes are justified and those changes are within the law. Also, what it does is it's giving government more authority to send federal observers to monitor jurisdictions for potential risks of discrimination at the polls on voting, not just voting day, just when people early vote, and just making sure there's someone there monitoring to make sure no one is trying to intimidate people and give them some sort of unfettered access or any sort of interruptions to them being able to vote. And if people don't know what that means, there's a lot of younger people out there who may not know. Prior to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, there were all kind of shenanigans done by various different states and localities, particularly to prevent African Americans from voting. And those things included counting beans in a jar and having to guess how many there were, or reciting the Constitution, or just things that don't make any sense, that is not in the Constitution, that were extracurricular activities made to intimidate voters once they made it into the voting booth, along with any sort of things that was being done that were even outside the law, where they were attacking people physically to prevent them from voting. So these things are fundamental. These things are important. So if you get an opportunity to, not if you get an opportunity, this is the call to action. Your call to action this week, as in every week when we talk about this, is call your local congressman or your congresswoman. Call your senator, call your representative and say, we support the HR 4 Voting Rights Act, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Now, there's been some movement in this. Both of these things have passed the House of Representatives, but they are in the Senate for consideration. And there's been some movement on at least HR 4, and some of the things that happened in HR 4 where there was a little bit of movement, I think I've gone to the wrong chart, was there was some discussion that happened this week where some of the senators were coming into agreement on automatic voter registration, which is a big thing, which was in there, making Election Day a holiday, and also mandating at least 15 days of early voting for all federal elections, and also banning partisan gerrymandering. And if you don't know what that word is, that gerrymandering is when your elected officials choose the voters as opposed to the voters choosing the elected officials. And how that's done is when they have the department, when the census is taken every 10 years, the district lines for the voting congressional districts are realigned based on the changes in the population. Either you get more or you get less, or sometimes it doesn't change as far as how many congressmen, how many congresspeople are actually in your district. So this is important. So at least these 4 items, again, automatic voter registration, making Election Day a holiday, mandating at least 15 days of early voting for federal elections, and banning partisan gerrymandering where they try to give people an advantage based based on their political preferences, when they should just do it based on where people live and whatever the changes are. So these are important things that we have to remember to continue to support, and to know that there's been a little bit of movement on that in the Senate is a good thing, but there's still more work to do. And most of that work really needs to come from the people. The people need to call in and basically state that what they're interested in trying to do is making sure that all Americans have the right to vote, okay, and that all Americans are basically ensured that they can have unfettered right to voting rights access. And this is an important thing, okay, very important thing. So folks, call your congressman, call your congresswoman, call your senator, talk about some of the changes that happened this week. You also want to call your House of Representatives folks too, because the House of Representatives basically have passed some of this legislation. But, you know, I don't know about all the political machinations that go on, but, you know, things, the House passes things, then the Senate has to pass it. Then they both sort of go into conference, they agree on things, don't agree on things. Ultimately, they come out with something that is that people want to move forward on in both the House and the Senate. And hopefully that gets passed. And once that gets passed, it goes to the president's desk for signature. While the president is still continuing to excuse me, folks, I got all this technology working at once on me now. So I've got to make sure I turn off some of this technology before I get started. So the president uses his bully pulpit, as I was saying, to basically support these things and then to also sign them. And once he signs them, they become law. So that's kind of an abbreviated explanation of how the process works. But the process only works if you get involved. You have to be the one who puts the pressure on your elected officials to say, hey, this is what we support. And you have to call them up, you know, send them an email, send them a text. But, you know, it's easy for you to go to congress.gov and then, you know, put in your address, and then it tells you who your Congress people are, your representatives in the state, in the Senate and the House of Representatives, and has their phone numbers. Give them a call, send them an email. I suggest you give them a call and just say, hey, we need to make sure these things get passed so we all have our right to vote, because voting rights are foundational. Because once you have the right to vote, that then gives you the ability at that point to make your voices heard. And also, it also helps your elected officials basically say, hey, I need to get on board with this if I wasn't already on board with it, and make sure this gets done for my constituencies. So, you know, you definitely want to do that. So voting rights is foundational. Not wearing my t-shirt today. I am wearing my blue. It matches the frame. But hey, listen, that's not all we have going on in Virginia. But that's going on all over the country as far as voting rights is concerned. But in Virginia, let me tell you, in Virginia, we have elections every year. So we never get a break, and we're always being vigilant, and always there's either federal elections, state elections, local elections, but somebody's being elected every year in the state of Virginia. So we're kind of used to this here. And our elected officials have done a very good job in what they've been doing on a local and on a state and on a federal level. Virginia has really made some fantastic progress and making sure that these things like voting rights are available. A lot of the things that I just mentioned, they're already law in Virginia. But what H.R. 1 and H.R. 4 does is makes it law across the country and makes everybody have the same rights no matter which of the 50 states that you live in. So folks, call your people, call to action, call your congressman. It doesn't take long. You get up in the morning, you have your coffee, whatever you're going to do, ride to work, or you know, you're working from home, just hit that number and say, hey, I need you to support this congressperson. Please support this, and give them a call weekly. You know, give them a call every day if you got time. But support Voting Rights Act, because voting rights are foundational to getting anything done that you want your government to get done for you. Listen, we've got other stuff, as I told you, in Virginia. Elections are happening every week. I mean, almost every week, but every year. And we've got a fantastic election that's coming up in November the 2nd. And we've got some House of Delegates folks who are running. There's quite a few of them, as well as we have a statewide ticket for governor, for lieutenant governor, and also for attorney general for the state of Virginia. We've got some fantastic folks out there that are running in the state of Virginia. And I want to kind of let you know who those folks are. Let's first start talking about that statewide ticket. That statewide ticket we have for Attorney General is Mark Herron, who's been doing a fantastic job for 8 years. He's also running again this year, so make sure you get out there on November 2nd and pull that lever for Mark Herron. Make sure that you're supporting the various different events he's giving to make things happen. And also for Lieutenant Governor, we've got Hala Ayala. And Hala Ayala is running for Lieutenant Governor in Virginia, and the same thing. You got to make things happen for Hala. You got to make things happen so she'll be the first woman Lieutenant Governor voted in of Latina, and it will be a fantastic thing if we can get everybody out in order to make this historic change in Virginia. It's just great having her there. And it looks like but we can't take anything for granted, even though Virginia kind of gets its statewide folks elected all the time. We still can't be, slacking off on the job. We can't take things for granted. We've got to be vigilant. We've got to be active. And that means support them how you can financially, support them at their events, tell your friends and your family, bring somebody to the polls with you. Early voting has started in Virginia. So you definitely want to get out there and do what you need to do, get that voting out the way and go ahead and, and put it in the bag. And you can go on about your business and you got time to call about voting rights. But that would have gotten done for you. And of course, last, but of course not least, our former governor, getting it done. Always exciting to hear him speak and have him bring things to the forefront. Terry Mcauliffe, the former governor of Virginia, is also running again for governor in Virginia. And he's got fantastic support. But again, none of these folks, none of these statewide folks or any of the House of Delegates can get any of this done without us supporting them. So we've got to continue to support them. We got to make sure people get out there for Terry Mcauliffe and getting it done for him as he runs for governor again. He's done a fantastic job. His record is beyond compare. We've got a lot of exciting stuff that's happening on November 2nd. And right now, we're all working across Virginia and across the country for everybody who's helping Virginia out to make sure Terry Mcauliffe becomes our next governor again. And Hala Ayala becomes our next lieutenant governor again. And also Mark Herron also becomes our attorney general again. He's done a great job over the last 8 years, and we need him in there again. So folks, get out there and make it happen. And, we've got a fantastic guest for you as I change my subjects just a little bit that's getting ready to come on board with us. We'll probably bring him in a little early this time because our co-host is not here. She's, like I said, on travel out of the state, and she may have some challenges. But if she does jump in, we're going to go ahead and bring her in. Well, let me tell you about our special guest we have today. We've got a fantastic gentleman today, and his name is Charley Conrad. Charley Conrad lives by a simple model. And his simple model is, if you're not having fun, you're not doing something right, because you got to get out there and have fun and get it done and get it done right. Charley's been in the government for 30 years. And he was a federal employee at the GSA. He's also a 20-year Navy veteran. I mean, this guy's got some great experience behind him. He's served on 5 ships, 8 years of active duty, 12 years of Ready Reserve, retired as a Senior Chief Quartermaster. What else can I say about Charley? A whole lot. I'm not done talking about Charley. This guy gets it done. And let me tell you, he is past president of the Virginia Partisans, Gay and Lesbian Democratic Club. He's a founding member and past chair of the LGBT Democrats of Virginia. And he's currently serving as an at-large member for the LGBT Democrats of Virginia. And folks, that's not it. And he's also chair of the Veterans Caucus for Arlington Democrats. And I haven't told you everything you need to know about him. Charley's going to come on and tell you a lot more. He's going to weigh in on some of these things, particularly about the Virginia election that's coming up and what he gets done for us. So I want everybody to kind of put their hands together so we can bring a fantastic person on board, and that's going to be Charley Conrad. How you doing, Charley? Welcome to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show, live streaming on Facebook, streaming on YouTube, and more places to come pretty soon. And Charley's cutting some lights on there so he doesn't look like he's in the witness protection program.
Yeah.
But we got Charley up here. Charley, it's good seeing you, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with your group this evening. It's always fun to talk to fellow Democrats on the same path, so it's always good.
Oh yeah, Charley, it's good hearing you. I wanted to just welcome you onto the show. I was telling our folks earlier, our co-host is on travel, and she may call in or she may not call in, but however, we've got you here. We've got you here to talk about what you want to tell us about voting rights and what you want to tell us about what you do in Arlington and what you've done in your career, and just talk about any of the things that you want to talk about. So
okay.
What I want to do is just take this opportunity to really sort of talk to you about that. And
all right. Well, I came by this stuff kind of late in the game. I was a single father raising my son for a lot of years. The wife and I split when he was 4 years old. But the blessing was that I got to raise my son as a single father, and that was just a joy in my life. And sometimes I get caught or choked up over it because it was just an incredible experience. But in 2000, when he was graduating from high school, I've always wanted to get involved in political stuff. And I said, this is the time. So there's a funny little story. Back in 2000, we didn't have internets and websites and stuff like we have today. But I somehow got in touch with Susan Swicker in Richmond. And she was involved with the Gore campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And so Susan said, well, call Sandra Brandt, because I was living in Virginia Beach at the time.
Okay.
And so I called Sandra Brandt, and Sandra Brandt goes, well, if you want to get involved, be so-and-so and so-and-so tomorrow.
That sounds like Sandra.
Yeah. So, I did, and the rest is history. Sandra is one of my most trusted confidants and mentors. And, she never asked me to do anything that I hadn't seen her do herself. She's a hard worker, and she showed me early on what it was to do grassroots activism. And when a job opportunity for me came up in 2004, I left my job on the naval base in Norfolk and moved to our headquarters staff in Crystal City.
Okay.
And I was up here for 2 days, and on the third day I was here. I was at my first Arlington Democrats meeting. And I've been involved with the Arlington Democrats ever since. And I've been, precinct captain and, for 10 years, and really enjoyed that work because, you work hard to get people to come in and vote, in your precinct. And, what I used to love is I'd run into people and they'd point at me and they'd be going, you're the Democrat man. And I go, that's right. I am the Democrat man.
The Democrat man. Okay.
But anyway, it was fun. But if you got a minute, Mark, I'd like to share a little story about my training that I received from the Obama campaign in 2008. Do you have time for stuff like that?
Oh, man, I want you to talk about whatever it is.
Okay. Are we good? Are we still in? I don't know where somebody went. Everything okay? Okay, looks like we're live. But anyway, I endorsed Barack Obama in May of 2007. And so got signed up on his volunteer roles and stuff like that. And they trained us on how they wanted us to canvass and do grassroots activism in Virginia, because the Obama campaign targeted Virginia as a state they thought they could win in 2008 and get these 13 electoral votes for Barack Obama. So we received some very intense training, but it's training that I use to this day. And there was a skill set that they worked on with us, and I ended up being a neighborhood team captain. I think it was 5 precincts that I was responsible for in South Arlington for the Obama campaign in 2008. And we did a lot of canvassing, a lot of knocking on doors, but we were trained the way the Obama campaign wanted us to be trained. And the crux of the thing that was most compelling is they enabled us and empowered us to do things we wanted to do. We didn't need people's permission to do something. You would inform the campaign through the website that this is, you're doing this event and that event. We all had field organizers and stuff like that, but it was really an empowerment. But then the most significant thing, I think, is when we were canvassing door to door, that we would tell the person we're talking to why we're supporting Barack Obama. And that reason, a lot of times, was something that would clinch the vote. Because, after you talk about how, the things that Barack Obama stood for either related to you, then you can ask the voter, so does that sound like somebody you could vote for? And 9 times out of 10, the answer was yes. And so, we continued that. And of course, we won the election. But then we worked on, after that, we worked on everything up until, the 2012 election. Mm-hmm. And, but then.
Hey, Charlie, before you go there, let me ask you a quick question. If just let me interrupt you for a second.
Uh-huh.
Did you go down to that training that they sent all those folks in Virginia down to Hampton University when they were doing that training for Obama ambassadors or whatever it was? Were you at that training?
No. The only training I received was in Richmond or in Northern Virginia.
Okay. Go right ahead, sir. Keep on telling us your story.
But, then comes Terry Mcauliffe in 2013. Mm-hmm. And Terry's campaign, Terry hired the best of 2013, of Obama 12, and brought him into Virginia. Mm-hmm. But the skills that we learned from the Obama campaign, we used for Terry's campaign. And the same thing, I like canvassing. I like knocking on doors and talking to voters. Mm-hmm. And we did that same thing for Terry. So, and I'm basically doing the same thing. I'm canvassing for Terry now for another term as governor. But those grassroots things are things I like to do. But it also, and I like to invite your audience to just listen to this little nugget here, is that we are all validators. Mm-hmm. And we need to be validators for our candidate, whether it's for president, for school board, for county board, for whatever. Mm-hmm. We validate the fact to our neighbors, our families, and friends that this is an important election, and these are the people we should vote for. Because a lot of times people aren't up on, all of the stuff that we just intuitively know. Like, when does early voting start? And I was making calls for Terry just before this thing started, and people didn't know that we could early vote. And I said, they said, you mean we don't have to have a reason? I said, no, you don't have to have a reason. It's called early voting.
Early voting, it started a few days ago, and a lot of people don't know it. People like you getting out there and let them know, hey, get it out the way. I was talking about it earlier. Put that in the bag and move on to other things. Go ahead, Charlie.
But I just think, the things that are going on now that we see people trying to prevent people from being able to vote. These things in these different states where they put these laws, like in Georgia, these really repressive things that block people's access to voting. We've got to be alert about that. That's why we need to retain a Democratic majority in the House of Delegates and elect these 3 people to the statewide offices and keep them in office because when Democrats handle things, it's very, very important.
And it gets done when Democrats handle things. And, I was just talking about that before you came on to the show, voting rights. And there was some interesting movement in the Senate. I don't know what you heard about it. You heard about some of that movement with Joe Manchin and some of the things for the HR 4 for the John Lewis voting rights?
No, I didn't hear that. What happened?
Well, some very interesting things happened in there. And I was just mentioning some of those. And I can tell you real quick, I'm going to just throw up the screen again. Basically, what was going on, what happened the last day or two is there were movement agreement on automatic voter registration, making election day a holiday, mandating 15 days of early voting for federal elections, and banning partisan gerrymandering. So that was in the Senate. So, both of these bills have passed in the House, but everything was sort of just held up in the Senate. But that was good that they at least, have Manchin on board for that. Senator Manchin, Joe Manchin out of West Virginia. And these are going to even things across all 50 states and make sure that that voter suppression doesn't happen. But they have to get 10 more Republican senators, or they have to get rid of that filibuster. Exactly. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, sometimes Joe Manchin's a fly in the ointment, and he really plucks the nerves sometimes. Yeah. Right. But trying to get Republicans to come on board with that is going to be a tall order. But I mean, the thing is, we have to force it. We have to force the issue. We have to make people vote. So then those senators vote. So say, okay, so you're going to vote against this voting rights bill. I'm voting against it. So, to me, you force the action to make it something that's important. So, like we were doing voter registration in our condo over the weekend, and it's just we are fortunate in Virginia now that we've worked really hard. And Mark, this, we've worked really hard for 20 years to get to where we are now, and we need to preserve that and protect it and defend it at all costs. And so I always try to urge people is to break out of your comfort zone. A lot of people say, I don't like making phone calls and I don't like knocking on doors. I say, well, do you like Republicans running things?
No.
So, and I've taken people and showed them how to make calls and doors, and it's easy. I mean, most of the time we're talking to good Democrats. We just want to make sure they're going to come and vote, because I'm concerned about that they think, well, we're a blue state now, so we'll be all right. Well, no, we ain't gonna be all right if people don't vote. So we found that out with dear Hillary in 2016. So we just got to be on the job. And can I share one more thing, and then I'll quit gabbing. But I just in 2000 we totally had to reinvent how we campaign. We were not able to knock on doors. We were not able to do any kind of campaigning. The only thing we could do was make phone calls. And I don't want you to think I'm bragging or tooting my own horn, but I just want to let you know that Joe Biden campaign empowered us to do big things just like Barack Obama did. And I made a little studio in my condo, just pulled a bookcase against the wall. And I set up 4 events on the Joe Biden website, and they were called What Can I Do to Help Joe Biden Today? And I taught 4 Zoom classes a week from June 1 to November 3. And we figured out that we trained over 843 people, and we were making targeted calls into all of those targeted states. And we did it all through the interactive capability of the Joe Biden website. And it was incredible. It was really good. And so I figured out one day, I said, well, we probably made at least 10,000 phone calls. And one of the experts said, oh, no, y'all probably made at least 50. And, 50,000 phone calls into those targeted states. And now I'm not saying I did this, but you know what I'm saying? We helped.
We helped. We made it happen.
Yeah, and we validated. So that's why I say, please be a validator. Be able to speak up. If you hear somebody saying something that's not right, speak up. People like to say, well, Democrats aren't good for small business. Well, if you're a small business, speak up. Oh, yes, Democrats are good. Who cut taxes to small businesses? Was that Republicans? No, it won't. It was Democrats cut taxes to small businesses so they could have more money to work their businesses and stuff. And who forced the Recovery Act so that small businesses could get money? But business owners, need to speak up and tell their story about it.
Well, that's the same thing when we're talking about the American Rescue Plan, which has already been passed. That's helped a lot of people, and the PPP that's out there that put money in their pocket in their payroll protection program, along with the EIDL, which is providing additional money for them to scale their business, and as well as the RRF, which is a restaurant restoration thing that was part of that, as well as the SBA loan debt relief. And I think I'm leaving one out too. Oh yeah, the shuttered venue operations for live performance, places like theaters and people connected with that business had all been impacted by COVID. And then you throw infrastructure on there, the infrastructure plan, which is being negotiated now, both for physical infrastructure and people infrastructure. And let's not leave out what you did with Barack Obama back in 2008, getting that health insurance class so people, small business owners could leave companies and still be able to get affordable insurance so that they could still take care of themselves and their family. But go ahead, Charlie, you're exactly right.
Well, and those programs need to be defended and kept. And
absolutely.
That's why I am active now with the Veterans Caucus. I'm a membership gatherer for the Democratic Party of Virginia's Veterans Caucus, but I'm also the chair of the Veterans Caucus in Arlington, because the Republicans try to take the veterans mantle from us and say, oh, well, no, we do more for veterans, we're more patriotic. When you start telling what Democrats have done for veterans, then they get real quiet all of a sudden. And I've seen it. I've done it firsthand. And you tell the story about what Terry Mcauliffe did as governor for veterans in Virginia, eliminating veterans homelessness. And one of the best things they did too was set up these satellite veterans offices all around the state to act as a liaison with the Veterans Department. National Veterans Department. And I know this firsthand because I took my ex-wife over there. Her husband had died and he was a veteran, and she moved to Virginia. So I took him right over to one of Terry's satellite offices. They picked up the phone to the VA and had all her business taken care of right there.
Right there on the spot.
When you call the VA, they say, okay, first you push all these buttons and everything. And then say, okay, your wait time is approximately 68 minutes. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So it's,
Yeah. Well, the other thing that Terry did too, he signed all of those restoration of rights for folks who had served their time and did what they needed to do and got their voting rights back for them again, got the franchise back for them. No one has done that besides Terry. And you know what? I got to correct something earlier. Early voting starts, I believe, this Tuesday. One of the callers.
It starts Friday, the 17th. Starts Friday,
the 17th. Yeah, excuse me. That's what I meant to say. So I know somebody would call and say, "Hey, not yet. You got 2 more days."
But it's something that the House of Delegates worked to get passed. That Governor Northam signed.
Right.
So to me, if you can vote early, go vote.
Right. Go ahead and get it done. Right.
I'm gonna probably go down there. And some people say, "Oh, I like to vote on election day." I say, "Well, okay, but I say,
I like to get it out the way and get that.
I know I voted. I know I voted. So
Yeah, I take my father down there. He's going to be 85 coming up this year, but I always take him to go vote early and get it out the way. You can't sit around in those lines or things like that. But you're right. That's the best way to get it done. Tell me a little bit about what you did with some of these, with the LGBT caucus and what you've been doing with that, Charlie, and what you.
When I moved up here in 2006, I was elected the president of the Virginia Partisan Gay and Lesbian Democratic Club, and it was just a constituency group that Adam, now State Senator Adam Ebbin, had formed in order to help get out the vote for Jim Moran when he ran for Congress the first time to do outreach to the LGBT community.
Right.
And so over the years, that little organization continued to grow, but it just exploded when this man named Barack Obama got elected president because his campaign flushed out all these gay folks. And all of a sudden, we had huge memberships, and we had enough people that we could form a legitimate caucus within the Democratic Party of Virginia. And so we, did everything was supposed to be done. And Delegate Alfonso Lopez advocated for us to become a recognized caucus within the Democratic Party of Virginia, basically mirroring what the DNC had. And so we were one of the first caucuses to be recognized within the Democratic Party of Virginia. But then I continued to be president for or the chair of that caucus for about a year. But I'm going to tell you something. I've been doing it for a long time. And, there's a burnout factor that happens. And I told the committee, I said, you know what, let me tell you something. I helped get us to the table, but somebody else has got to take it from here because, I'm burned out. And it happens. I think it happens in these political things. So when I took over, I became the vice chair for elections, which I love doing, and I helped motivate the LGBT community all across the state to campaign for these various candidates all around the state and national and statewide elections. And basically what we did is we melded into already existing campaign structures all around the state. But I basically just gathered the information and pointed people, and it works a lot better than trying to have like a veterans phone bank or an LGBT phone bank or a women's phone bank. Just meld into stuff that's already set up and just get in there and do some work. By the time you try to do that hoo-ha, you could have been working 10 times by that, So, and so I did that. And then it was just this last year that I stepped down from that, and I'm an at-large member because I wanted to get more involved with the veterans. Especially with Terry running, because Terry had done so much for veterans. And I said, the veterans have got to show up and do something for Terry because, he's done so much for the veterans. So,
anything in particular you want to talk about, what you may have coming up or things that you're planning on doing up to November 2nd, Election Day? Anything you got on the books or something you want to share?
Well, the main thing that the veterans are doing is, outside of campaigning, is we do a boxed cereal drive at every Arlington Democrats, open event, and we give those cereals to the Arlington Food Assistance Center. But we just had a caucus meeting this evening of the Arlington veterans, and we're going to continue to do that. But also we're going to continue to meld into the coordinated campaigns efforts locally.
Right.
I canvass everywhere. I canvass Saturday and Sundays, and I make calls on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Now, not everybody can do that because I'm retired, and so I got plenty of time to do stuff like that. And the only thing that has priority over that are my two little granddaughters who gets grandpa time on Saturday night. They live in Springfield, so I get to go hang out with my granddaughters on Saturday night for a couple of hours. But so that's the main thing. And I just, I also want to say to folks is like, if when I started coming around, people came up to me with a smile and a handshake, and they welcomed me in. and they helped me get involved with stuff, and it gave me an opportunity to start doing some things I wanted to do. And so the one thing I always ask of folks is to please be a validator and validate how important it is to vote and do these things and vote for Democrats. But the other thing is I like to share with people is if you see somebody new and you don't recognize them, please go up to them, smile and a handshake.
Right, absolutely.
Welcome them in, because they showed up. They want to do something. But if they're just standing there with their face hanging out and nobody says anything
to them, right?
Guess what? They going home.
Exactly.
So
showing up is 50% of the battle. You gotta show up first.
Yeah, but if you show up and nobody speaks to you or says anything and says, please come back, or we got this going on, you might be interested in this, they're not going to know what to do. And it's just, I think it's so important. I got these little business cards that I give people when I'm talking to them. And I tell them, I said, now look, if you don't feel like you're getting connected, give me a call, because I will get you connected. But, you can do stuff like that to make people feel welcome.
Well, make a little rundown, because you're an Arlington guy. You can talk a little bit about the 8th Congressional District here in Virginia. You can talk about Margot Horner, who's the chair there, and Don Byer. What's your thoughts there on that fantastic folks we have out there, and just that whole team of people?
I did not realize when I moved up here in June of 2004 that I had dropped into Democratic Wonderland.
There you go.
I mean, it was fantastic, and Margot has become an incredible mentor to me as well. I mean, and a friend, and it's she's another one. She's a workhorse. She's not a show horse,
Right.
I mean, she's like you. You do stuff. You work hard. We see the show horses. We know who the show horses are.
Right.
We got to be the workhorses. Got to come out and do something. But I'm really privileged. Jim Moran was a fantastic congressman, and now we're blessed.
Don't forget about Jim.
Yeah,
I said we can't forget about Jim.
Yep. And now we're blessed with Don Byer, and he's just an incredible member of Congress, and he's doing so much all of the time. But you look at Don Byer, you look at people like Jim Moran, you look at people like Margot Horner. They're in leadership positions. They're leaders, and when they see you, how do they come? Smile and a handshake.
Exactly, every time.
Yeah, they want you to stay. They want you to help us. If you want to do something, we can get you doing it. And we're really blessed in the 8th Congressional District. I mean, it's just a splendid organization, because it's just rich with Democrats, and Democrats have been in place for a long time. And the Arlington Democrats are a strong, very strong organization. And one of my best friends, Kip Malinowski, was chair of precinct operations for 3 years, and then he was chair for 4 years.
Right.
And Kip and I worked the Obama campaign together, and I learned from Kip. I thought I had some game, but Kip got game. He really got game. He knows how to eat. I mean, I thought I could knock some doors of exit phone calls. Ain't nobody can out-knock Kip or out-call Kip. I mean, you might do 100 calls and he'll do, well, let me do 110. He'll get you, So, but it's fun. It's fun.
Everybody has something that they can do. And what I try to tell people, as you well know, it's a lot of raindrops make up an ocean. And everybody's contribution really in the aggregate is really what happens. So every little thing someone does, and the volunteers are the most important people that campaign can have, because they're the ones who get the message out. They're the ones that get down and do that hard. Like you said, those are the workhorses who actually do things on the ground locally to get things done, which turn out voters.
Yeah.
I mean, you being a guy who's been out there for so long doing this and really came underneath a really good tutelage out there, what's some advice that you would give? I mean, you said the smile and the handshake, but what are some of the other advice you would give to other Democrats who are out there trying to organize, get folks involved? What's your advice?
Well, the first thing that I would suggest is to be a good listener, because I have a lot of, like, what I like to call corporate knowledge. but I don't want to come out saying, okay, da 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 da. I need
Right.
to listen to what people are talking about because they want to get involved, they want to do stuff, and so right off the bat, I need to be a good listener. And one of my favorite lines is I like to say, it's been my experience that the best way to get involved is to do precinct work and do door-to-door canvassing. And people say, well, I'm not going to knock on doors and I'm not going to make phone calls. And, and I said, well, there's other things. And I always encourage people to find their niche because there is some place for you to do something that you want to do.
Exactly.
And because we don't want to send people to say, well, if you're not going to knock on doors and make phone calls,
we can't use
things.
Nothing to be put from the truth.
Yeah, and we definitely don't want to run anybody off. And the other thing I would just say is break out of your comfort zone. When I first knocked on my first door and made my first phone call, let me tell you something. That phone weighed 1,000,000 pounds. But you get used to making the phone calls, and you get used to knocking on the doors. And I've had some hilarious instances on the doors. I forget who we were campaigning for. It was way out there in Loud one time. Right. And I knocked on the door, and the woman answered. This was the person on my watch sheet. And so I knew something might be a little tricky in this neighborhood because I was on Confederate Street.
Okay.
But I got up there, I knocked on the door, and the woman answered, and all she goes, Jimmy, come get this. The Democrats done got my name. And so Jimmy comes to the door. Mark, he got a Confederate flag tattooed on his neck. And I'm going, and he goes, we vote Republican in here. And I said, okay, and I just went on, because you ain't gonna work. But you know PJ Palmer Johnson, right?
Oh, of course, I know PJ.
So PJ and I were canvassing down for Corey. What's the guy's name?
I know you're talking about the
Cory Booker. Is it Cory?
Oh no, not Cory Booker. He's not in Virginia, but you were doing stuff for him. It's about the Cory, the delegate, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, we were down there canvassing for him, and we couldn't find this house. And finally, it was all up this big winding road, way up this big winding road. We finally find it, at the end of a gravel road. As soon as we get out the car, we hear all kind of gunshots. And PJ goes, Charlie, we got to get out of here. I said, I'm going to go knock on this door. It took us this long to get up there. She goes, well, if you're going, I'm going. So we go up there, and it was a Democratic door, Right. He goes, don't worry about those gunshots. And we go, well, we are a little worried about it. He goes,
hey, Democrats own guns too. They just own them responsibly.
Yeah.
But Republicans don't, so I don't want to put that out there, but go ahead.
But they had a shooting range down the hill. See, it says
okay.
What's going on, but it was. But I mean, I've had a lot of funny things happen on the doors. It really is.
I've had some of the great conversations with people at the door. I really enjoy knocking doors. I don't have as much time for that, but I enjoy knocking doors and talking to folks on the phone. It's just a question of where can you put in your best time, depending upon where you're at. Yeah. Hey, another big thing that happened this week, did you get your yard signs came in? At least I did for Fairfax County. We've got those. We're buying some more yard signs. I think over 70-some thousand signs are supposed to be going up. So we're getting close to that date. So what would you say to folks who may be a little, let's just say, overconfident, or saying to Virginians in Virginia, we got this, we're so blue, we're so progressive? What would you tell them what they should be doing if they're or somehow think I might want to sit this one out? We got this. What would you tell them?
I said, don't do it, because everybody's got to vote. And the thing is always, like I said, about being a validator.
Right.
Talk to your neighbors, your family, and your friends about how important this election is. Try to get at least 10 people to vote and make sure that they're going to vote. And if they, say, please commit to me that you'll go and vote because it's this important. And the reason it's important to me is because, and there's some issues that might be important to you, and that helps kind of seal the deal. And, Terry McAuliffe had a huge lead in 2013. And what did he win? Yeah, he won by like 4. It was either 4 or 6%, so, I mean, it was close.
The same thing happened to Warner.
Yes.
Warner. He had a huge lead, and it just, folks don't come out and just think, bad things happen when you don't come out.
Yeah.
So, Charlie, you're hitting it nail square on the head. People have got to come out and vote. And if you're busy, hey, just do the early voting, get an absentee ballot. But whatever you do, make sure you go ahead and do that. I know you must also have a personal pet project or thing that you really like to do. I know you've told us a lot of stuff. If you were, for what you're doing right now, and you said you're getting more involved with the veterans, is something that you really want to talk about and sort of leave the audience with, the things that you really have personally care about that are related to the elections and everything else? I mean, just your own personal pet project.
Well, something that's really near and dear to me is education. And for the last 11 years, I've been a substitute teacher in the public schools in Fairfax County and in Arlington County. And the last 6 years, I was exclusively at Justice High School, which is the old Jeb Stewart County.
Yeah.
And I watched kids that came from the middle school where I used to, and I was working basically full time. I must have been a full time employee, but the nice thing about being a substitute is you work when you want to work. But anyway, I was watching kids graduate from high school that I knew since they were in the 6th grade, and it really touched my heart. And I'm gonna tell you something: when the T-Man got elected, those kids were crying in the hall. I mean, they were so upset because they saw all of their, they feared their parents were going to be deported. I mean, that Justice High School is a rich, beautiful, diverse community of students and faculty and staff. It was just a wonderful place to be. And I'm going to tell you something. I was embarrassed to be a white man in that school after that election, the T won. And I wore a little safety pin on my shirt all the time, so the kids would know that I did not vote for Trump. And they knew anyway I was a Democrat. I let them know all the time, but I felt so sorry for those kids, and it was difficult to watch. But when Terry McAuliffe became governor, he eliminated a lot of the SOL testing. He raised teachers' salary. He hired more guidance counselors and school psychologists in the schools, and along with his wife Dorothy, they implemented a program that I absolutely love. It's called Breakfast After the Bell.
Oh,
and what he did, and this is the brilliance of Democratic leadership. Everybody got breakfast. Okay, you didn't have to come in there because you didn't have enough money. You weren't on free and reduced lunch. It took that stigma right out of it. If you wanted a breakfast, first thing in the morning, you got it. Okay.
Wow. Even after the bell rings, they have that breakfast before school. But I guess I've been out of school forever. I didn't know that, but that's an excellent idea.
Yeah. So the kids come in first thing when they get that to eat that, and then after first period, after they've been in class for almost an hour, sometimes longer, then after first period, they all go down and get a second chance breakfast. It's breakfast after the bell. And, I'm hungry after, the first hour I'm working. We all are. And Terry always says, kids are hungry to learn, but they can't learn if they're hungry.
That's right.
So they go down there. And so that, to me, is one of my biggest causes. When I'm canvassing, and I say, well, education is a big one for me. And I talk about that because I see how these kids work and how they struggle and how hard they work and how hard the teachers work. And
you guys have been doing a fantastic job. And I've even heard Terry McAuliffe talk about how he wants to even put more resources, paying teachers paychecks to bring them up to where they ought to be and on par with other jurisdictions like Virginia and other parts. But that's great. You know, we're coming to the end of our show about 8 o'clock, and I wanted to give you an opportunity now to give out your social media handles and tell people how they can get in touch with you, because you're just a wealth of knowledge, beautiful person to talk to. You had a lot of experience, Charley. So go ahead and give people your contact information you feel comfortable putting out there, or your social media, whichever one you want to do.
Well, I'm on Facebook at Charley Conrad, and I'm on Twitter at Charley Conrad, and I'm on Instagram at Charley Conrad. Ooh, I'm forgetting the numbers. It's Charley Conrad. I think it's Charley Conrad 96 or 64. I'm not sure. But those are the three. And then my email is charleyconrad@gmail.com, and it's Charley with an EY, CharleyConrad. And my phone number is 703-835-6614. And Mark, thank you so much for inviting me to come tonight. I've really enjoyed this. And folks, just go out there and work and encourage people to vote and make sure they vote. And we got to keep a good thing going.
Charley, I appreciate you being on the show. I would love to have you back near or after the November 2nd election, just to get your analysis of what went on, what we did right, what some things we can improve on, because you're a fantastic wealth of knowledge. And I appreciate all the work you've done, and especially your service to the country. And you've just been a fantastic human being, man. I appreciate you being there, but we like to try to get out of here on time because we know people are busy. So, hey, this has been the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus show live with our special guest, Charley Conrad. So come on back next time, and we'll see you on next Wednesday to talk. Charley, we'll see you.
Thank you.
All right, take care, Charley.